Welcome back, fellow mobile gamers. I've got 4 really interesting games to share with you today, and just check this out. This is Tower of Fantasy, a game often referred to as the Genshin Impact killer, and today it's time to figure out if it's actually worth getting into this game. But I've also found the very best idle game I played this year, so I'm really excited to share that one with you, and also 2 very unique RPG games. So, which are you gonna enjoy the most? Let me know, and let's have a look at some mobile games. First up is Tower of Fantasy, which I also mentioned in my video about the 12 most highly anticipated games of the year. This is a massive action RPG clearly inspired by Genshin Impact, and after you get through the first few hours of story-based quests, the game world eventually opens up so we can freely explore its many monster camps, world bosses, and treasure chests. The hack and slash combat is also decently interesting in this game, and fighting the tough world bosses with a party of players I randomly found in-game felt fantastic. But the most unique parts of the combat gameplay are that we can, first of all, equip 3 different weapons at the same time and then freely switch between them to trigger special abilities. And then secondly, that we can dodge at just the right time to freeze up the enemies so we can land a few heavy hits before they start moving again. And this is part of what makes the combat kinda interesting. The game features a bunch of daily challenges, dungeons, and even 1 vs 1 PvP that is almost fair because our stats are normalized, but certain weapons still come with unique abilities that give huge advantages. The biggest downsides though are that the game lags, even on flagship devices, and then the fact that the controls can't be properly customized, at least when you compare it to a game like Genshin Impact. Tower of Fantasy monetizes through in-app purchases for a battle pass, and then gacha pulls that reward us with weapons, matrices to infuse in our weapons, and new, mostly cosmetic characters. You need to be online to play it. It takes up a whopping 8.4 GB of space, and it's not a bad game, but it does suffer from trying to do too much at once in an attempt to compete with Genshin Impact, and this leads to a lack of polish that takes away from the gameplay experience. Next up is Knights of Ages, a turn-based, story-driven strategy RPG where we manage a team of mercenaries that quickly get entangled in the politics and the dirty work of nobles fighting for their families and kingdoms. Now, part of what truly sets this game apart is that all our characters can get permanent injuries and eventually die of old age as well. So we have to continuously recruit new units, or of course get married, have a baby, and then slowly train it in combat. And talking about the game's combat system, it takes place on a grid-based map where we take turns to move and attack with all our units, and then we continue doing that until all of the enemies have been defeated. As a reward for winning these fights, our units gain XP so they can level up, and we get a currency and some items that we use to further improve our units. But eventually we also get our very own castle, and this is where the game really opens up, allowing us to craft items, buy and sell resources, quickly level up new units by sending them on training missions, and much more. The game is definitely rather hardcore and grindy, but it's also strangely difficult to put down, and I would say its biggest downsides are that the UI can be a bit confusing and the English translation isn't exactly perfect. Knights of Ages monetizes through in-app purchases that provide additional resources, but the game can easily be enjoyed as a free player as long as you stay away from the PvP arena dominated by older players. You have to be online to play. The game takes up 717 MB of space, and it gets really close to successfully pulling off its very unique gameplay concept, so if you like what you've heard about the gameplay, I think it's worth checking out. The third game I want to share is Idle Research, an impressive resource management incremental idle game that starts out with a focus on crafting flasks that produce energy, simple enough, right? But then quickly takes a turn and has us fight monsters, upgrade over 70 boosting skills, and lots more. So the core gameplay has us buy crafters that automatically produce whichever type of flask we select, and as we progress, we then unlock more and more flask types, and they each increase the efficiency of the previous flask type. But the thing is, to craft a higher tier flask, we need a certain amount of the previous tier, and this is where the management aspect comes in, because we need to carefully find a balance between how many flasks we have of each type and how many of our crafters produce each flask type. These systems allow for a lot of freedom in how to optimize our energy output, and they also make the gameplay experience rather fast-paced as our production quickly accelerates and we eventually unlock new convenience features. Idle Research monetizes through a few in-app purchases that allow us to progress faster, and then some infrequent incentivized video advertisements. But none of them are really necessary though, and they're definitely far less influential than in most idle games, so I actually quite enjoyed the monetization system. It can also be played offline. It takes up only 125 MB of space, and while the tutorial is a bit long and some of the UI elements aren't immediately obvious, it's a great incremental resource management experience with plenty to do and lots of gameplay depth. So it's an easy recommendation. And now, for one of my personal favorites, Resolute Hero, which is an extremely fast-paced, progression-based RPG inspired by games such as Inflation RPG and Heroes Quest, which have pretty much spawned their own subgenre at this point. So we start the game as a weak level 1 character with no items and no stat points, and on each playthrough we then have 20 energy, of which we spend 1 every time we fight one of the many enemies that are spread throughout the large open in-game world. Once we're out of energy by having fought 20 monsters, we then die and have to start all over again. The only thing we get to keep is our items, but this is enough to eventually allow us to skip the lowest level monsters and in that way get further in the next playthrough. Now, the combat itself takes place automatically, with our character and the opponent taking turns to attack each other, so this is all a numbers game. Get the best gear, correctly upgrade your stats, and defeat the highest level enemies you possibly can before running out of energy, and then repeat that. Now, at this point you might be thinking, NimbleThor, isn't this a core gameplay loop that quickly gets boring? And under normal circumstances, I would agree with you. But the thing is, we progress so incredibly fast in this game that it's impossibly difficult to put it down once you start playing it. So, do be warned, it's highly addictive. Resolute Hero RPG monetizes through a few in-app purchases to increase our drop rate. These do make the game even faster than it already is, but they're not at all necessary, and unlike other games in the genre, there are no ads at all in this game. It can be played offline, takes up 171 megabytes of space, and it's just a good old fun game that can be played for extended periods of time if that's what you're looking for, but still provides a rewarding experience when played in short intervals thanks to the fast progression systems. The next game is really awesome, and it's waiting in this video about the best magic survival alternatives. See what I did there? So go check it out. I hope you'll enjoy it, and until next time, just keep gaming, stay awesome, and I'll see you guys around.